With testing in Bahrain done, we can draw some conclusions for the rest of the season. The verdict is out on the Mercedes ratio trick, and it looks like AMG Mercedes Petronas F1 team will have the benefit of the bigger compression for quite some time this season. George Russell, as team leader at the Brackley team, has seen the opportunity to win his first title grow in a very big way. Lando Norris has backtracked on what he said earlier about the regulations, and Ferrari had some clever innovations. So, is Russell still the favourite to win the title, or are there more candidates? I'm Wimbo. Here's 3 seconds to leave a like. I don't think I need to go into too much detail about what the ratio trick is about, but if you've been living under a rock or you want to refresh your memory, here goes. Mercedes has found a way to increase the 16:1 ratio to 18:1 when the engine is hot. They built something on top of the cylinder that expands when the car is running. This loophole is believed to give as much as 30 HP more power, which would be a massive benefit over others. That's the story in a nutshell. So Ferrari, Honda and Audi protested and wanted things cleared up, and Red Bull, who knew about this loophole but didn't have it themselves, sided with the majority. So the FIA needed to close this loophole. Their verdict was that the car is legal for now because it passes the ambient cold static test. The FIA implemented a hot test at 130 degrees Celsius temperature on top of the ambient test. There will be a vote on this change via an e-vote, and if it passes, it will be implemented on the 1st of August, halfway through the season. This will give the Mercedes and McLaren teams a huge benefit, while Ferrari and Red Bull will have to do it without the loophole. I'm not mentioning Williams here, as they still have a lot of problems to solve, like the weight of the car, and I'm not mentioning Alpine because they're French. No, just kidding, they finished in last place in 2025. I don't see them driving up front. I just read in an article from the race that the teams might vote against the hot and the cold test, as proposed by the Power Unit Advisory Committee, the PUAC. The teams that protested only want a hot test. It's a little too complicated for me, but apparently, usually ratios shrink when the engines get hot. So they want engines to have a higher ratio at ambient temperatures, and then when it's hot, it lowers to what it should be. If I'm wrong about this, I'll hear about it in the comments. From what I understand, the teams that are against the loophole will have a 16:1 at ambient, and then below that at a hot test. And Mercedes will have more power than them anyway. So if the vote is against the double test, Mercedes is still the strongest. So yeah, happy days for George Russell and Der Toto, who was on a roll in the press conference saying it's a storm in a glass of water and their engine is not illegal, and then he said something really stupid about saying he's on a certain list that you don't want to be on. So 11 wins for Russell before the break and 1 for Antonelli, right? Well, no. There are still some issues for Mercedes. Petronas supplies all the Mercedes powered teams with 100% sustainable fuels this season. These fuels need to be homologated by the FIA. Homologation just means to get the approval or a certificate to use it. I had to look this up because I'm Dutch and my English is lacking sometimes. So Audi and Ferrari have this already organized. And I've heard Red Bull and VCarb are safe as well. The Petronas teams are in trouble because the Mercedes partner is in a race against the clock to get it all sorted before the first race in Australia. If Petronas does not receive full certification in time for the season opening Australian Grand Prix, Mercedes and their 3 customer teams would likely be forced to use a provisional temporary fuel blend. But those fuels might have less performance, so that would hamper Mercedes and their customers a bit. Toto Wolff also called this news overblown and there's nothing to worry about. Well, we'll keep an eye on things regardless. Looking at the final stage of testing in Bahrain, we can clearly see that the top 4 from last season are still the top 4. They're all trying very hard to push each other in the favourite role, and the sandbags haven't come off yet. James Vowles said when he came over the radio to talk to Sky during the testing that Red Bull looked really good until we spoke about their power units, and then they turned it down quite a bit. He said games were being played. Well, James, you know all about those games, don't you? He also gave Ferrari compliments for coming up with great innovations. Ferrari rocked up with a rear wing that flips upside down and a metal plate behind the exhaust. I'm sure the other teams aren't worried about it because there are no protests. Just like when Mercedes showed up in 2022 with no side pods. It's safe to say there is no clear all-out favourite, but if I were to pick one, it would be Mercedes, and this is good news for George Russell. Can we hand Russell the trophy then, since it's so obvious? Well, no. We learned last year that a season is very long. We have 24 races and 6 sprint races, and a lot of points can be scored in the second half of the season. Talking about sprints, Domenicali has said the fans want 12 sprints rather than 6. I don't know which fans say this, but I think he's hearing what he wants to hear. I'm a little all over the place about the sprint races. I like the old-fashioned weekend, but I'm also glad I'm going to Zandvoort this season, and it's a sprint weekend. Let's hope Verstappen wins both those races one final time. Russell has to beat his quick teammate Antonelli to win the title, and that will be harder than last year, I guess. I'm convinced Kimi will take away a lot of points from George, and that will benefit Verstappen. He needs to stay within range. He did that in the last half of the season last year as well, chasing the McLarens. Norris only won by 2 points in the end. Talking about the current world champion, he was all defiant last week, going against what Verstappen said about the new regulations, only to make a full 180-degree turn on it and admit there are issues with the regs. He said he only said it to get a reaction from people. Well, I think he was a little shocked by the reaction from the fans and the other drivers in the paddock, so he backtracked, something he does all the time. He did it when he was cheeky to Lewis Hamilton in the cooldown room, and he did it after he said Verstappen's win was luck and no skill in Brazil 2024. I'm sure there are more occasions where he blurted out stuff, read the reactions and felt he needed to do damage control. For a guy with a world title, he still has a lot to learn, that's for sure. Anyway, back to the important stuff of the 2026 season. The Ferraris and Verstappen will be in the mix too at certain tracks, even if Mercedes has more power. Same as the McLarens, who have the benefit of the loophole. So yeah, my title was a nice and dramatic question, but the answer is that it's too early to tell and that a season is long and dynamic. Things can change from update to update, from track to track, momentum comes and goes, and who knows, the FIA might throw in a TD here and there, and the order of performance changes. Max Verstappen had a long chat with Stefano Domenicali about F1, and I'm sure they'll take his advice seriously. It's a very dynamic sport, and that's what's so great about Formula 1. Subscribing to my channel is also great, for both of us. Take care now. Doei doei.